Hello and welcome to Art with Mr. P. Last week we looked at line. This week we're looking at the visual element of colour, and we're going to be looking mostly at paint. We'll end up doing a little bit of collage, which will lead us nicely on to next week when we'll be doing a lot more collage. Now we'll be looking at warm and cool colours. We'll be looking at primary colours and how we can mix primary colours to make secondary and tertiary colours. Artists to look at, well, if you want to look at some artists, you could look at Kandinsky. Look at the shapes and the colours and the lines that Kandinsky used. You can look at Hundertwasser and Myerscough, all Love as a Colour. So, exploring colours. First, I would like you to fill a piece of paper with wavy stripes of warm colours. So those will be the colours that have got red and yellow in here. So we could start off just with red. So there we are, that's red. I think we'll go round like this. Keep the colours nice and clean and strong. So there's one of our primary colours, is red. So if I take a little bit of red and I put some yellow in it, we get a secondary colour, of course. And that secondary colour is going to be orange. So I put some yellow into the red, we get an orange. Okay, we're going a bit too red, so I'm going to add some yellow to this. I want it to be orange, really. Orange. Okay, so I'm hoping that you can realise that these are warm colours that we're using on this sheet. And we keep going, fill up the page with warm colours. So we're looking at versions of yellow, orange and red. And if you put a lot of red into a little bit of blue, you might get a nice warm purple colour. Okay. And then I would like you to fill up another sheet with wavy lines, but this time with cool colours. So we're talking about colours with lots of blue in here. So obviously the coolest you can get will be this blue colour. Put a little bit of white in there, can we? Well, here's wavy lines. Okay, now we could put a little bit of yellow in there, and that will give us secondary colour. So we've used the primary colours, we've used red, blue and yellow. Now we're making up some secondary colours, but remember this sheet is really about cool colours. So we fill the whole page so that it's got wavy lines of cool colours. So you've got two sheets, one filled up with warm colours and one filled up with cool colours. Luckily, here are some I did earlier. So we got one sheet filled up with cool colours, so they're mostly blues, yeah, and one filled up with warm colours. Now, we're going to, once they're dry, and they have to be absolutely dry, we're going to try a little bit of Sgrafitto, and what I'd like you to do is to cover these. Now do one at a time, yeah? Cover these with a different colour. So I'm actually going to put a little bit of yellow into my white because the white is so thin. Actually, I hardly put any yellow in. Look how it's turned it into a cream colour. Yeah? But it's still warm, that's the thing. So I'm putting loads of white on here. In it goes. And I quickly go over the whole thing. Or do half of it, but don't let it dry. Because before it dries, what I'd like you to do is Sgrafitto, which means scratch, yeah? So it's where we get the word graffiti from. Right, I'm going to make the brush strokes all go in the same direction so they're not too confusing actually. Mostly the same direction now. Right, fairly smooth. I'm going to turn the brush round the wrong way and use the handle of the brush to draw textures and patterns. Yeah. Now, an artist worth looking at is Hundertwasser, Austrian, lived in New Zealand. Yeah, after the war he moved there, and he loved spirals. He hated straight lines. He had a thing about straight lines, but he was very much into colour. Yeah, very creative man. Right, okay, and we can go around that again. So what's happening is the colour from behind is showing through, yeah? So I go over this whole thing. Okay, and you'll notice that a few of these could look like the sun or flowers. Different kinds of lines I'm drawing on here, yeah. So it relates back to last week. All sorts of things you can do. Okay, so I keep going until I've filled up the whole sheet with different kinds of marks. Yeah. Like this. Keep going until you've filled up the whole sheet. Then do the same to your other one. Okay, so you've got your background, you paint over it, so you can't really see it well, you can only just see it, yeah. You can use just white, you can use just black if you want. And then you turn the brush over and you draw designs in there. So you end up with two sheets that have something like that on them. Right, next, take your warm sheet. Here's a warm sheet, definitely warm colours anyway. And you'll need a pair of scissors. And what I'd like you to do now is to cut out some shapes. Obviously, you would be doing this much more carefully than I'm doing. And you can stick these onto your background. So what you're going to have is, you're going to have, in the background, you're going to have either warm or cool colours. And then in the foreground, so the bits that are in front, yeah, you're going to have either warm or cool colours, whichever the other isn't. Yeah, so what I mean is, I can build up this picture with, I've got my warm background, which maybe suggests the weather or something, yeah? And I've got my cool plants in the foreground here. So I'll do another one. Let's see that there. But as carefully as I can, I'm cutting these out. Now, it's quite a nice technique, this Sgrafitto, because it would be very, very difficult to paint this in any other way. I wouldn't know how you would. Okay, so there's another flower, and I can paint some, cut out another piece of this. There we are. So that could be the stem for that flower. Okay, I think I'll make it a bit thinner. Stick that in there. We need some leaves, don't we? Could have some more leaves. Something like that. Okay, so it may seem like we haven't covered very much, but actually in just these few moments we've talked about primary colours. So we've talked about red, blue and yellow. We've talked about warm colours, which are the colours that got reds and yellows in. We've talked about the cool colours, which are the colours of the blues and probably the greens in here. You've covered sheets. You've had a go at a bit of Sgrafitto. And then we've gone on to a new technique where if you stick these down, this then becomes a bit of collage. Now, this preempts next week, because next week we're going to be doing collage together. And we might, in preparation for next week, you might, with any paint that you've got left over, like I've done, you might want to paint a few sheets that you'll be able to use for collage next week. Now, I'm hoping that all primary sevens will know what collage is, and I'm hoping that you will be able to tell me where the word collage comes from, which country, which language you would associate it with. So, see what you can come up with, yeah? I think you can get some interesting textures. Remember, textures about how things look, how they feel. Interesting shapes, interesting lines, and an interesting combination of colours. Now, that's a lot of visual elements in one go. Gonna look good. Well done. Okay, so last week we looked at line. This week we looked at colour, and we've introduced collage. We looked at warm colours, we looked at cool colours, we looked at primary colours, secondary colours, and what happens when you mix those. Now next week we are doing collage, and you'll want to gather in advance some magazines and newspapers, and if you have any paint left over from this week, you might want to cover a few sheets of spare paper, newspaper, phone book, whatever you have to hand, so that you've got a few extra sheets that you can cut up and stick next week. Well done.